Hey, I received a great email asking me a question about the topic for the final paper, and I want to just I want to spiel on it here. I've added to the final module, which I'm now calling the week 13 through 15 module, the stage 4 final paper rubric. What you should see is a very consistent alignment between stage 3, your rough draft, and stage 4, the final paper. That alignment makes sense. I have clearly been building you through the course towards what I hope will be great research papers. So your rough draft and your final rubrics ought to look a lot alike, right? So there's that. You can find it there. Check your alignment. I have no faith that Camtasia is going to record this synchronously, so I'm going to try to give you things to look at instead of my talking head. So let's have a look here. That your 15-page thesis-driven research paper, in it, you will define what religion or religious culture means for your purpose. You will establish the historical context of the slave trade and the African diaspora in the U.S., and you will explore an element of subjectivity or personhood for a specific historical moment that we have studied, from Equiano's narrative to contemporary hip-hop culture. So let's think alignment through this course. The stage 1 established African root. Stage 2 allowed you to move in towards a study of subjectivity. What does this mean, and how does this set you up for a final paper? Establishing the historical context of the slave trade becomes that foundation for a strong argument. If you cannot describe the historical situatedness of your research, we have not got a research paper. We move from the outside to the inside when we move from historical context to subjectivity. And somebody like Du Bois was remarkable in that he not only lays bare his soul with a very philosophically and psychologically informed narrative regarding his experience of a double consciousness, but he also places in those subsequent chapters, he places that experience within its socio-economic context. One doesn't get to double consciousness alone. One gets there through the power of the color line, which he tracks through history. So what we see in Du Bois is that interplay between a focused presentation of a sense of self, that narration of self, but we also see that he relates that sense of self to that deep and historically informed context in which the self is experiencing its world. So that's a model. Du Bois' Souls of Black Folk is a model for the kind of work I'm hoping will happen in your final papers. Let's think about what a student asked me. I have had 2 of you ask me about the thesis you're thinking about, and in both cases, it started as an early thesis does, too big. So here's one of them. I have been brainstorming and was wondering what you think about me writing my paper centered around the varieties of different religions that African Americans have turned to over the years, from the time of their severe oppression to now, and the reasons why many of these religions were able to survive throughout these years. Now, I can sure feel the thinking going on in that question, but unless you are Ken Burns with a limitless budget, or you are the editor of an encyclopedia, you could not cover the breadth of material described in that question. So you're going to have to zero this right down, and let's give that a try. You're going to start with establishing the historical context of the slave trade. That could take you 2 paragraphs. There are some people who will focus their final paper on Equiano because the interesting narrative was for them such an important book, they want to spend the whole research paper writing about it. So everybody's paper is going to have from 2 paragraphs to a whole essay establishing what were the years of the slave trade, what kinds of numbers of people are we talking about, what geographical range. You've got to get that historical piece in place. Then, from that, you are going to move into what most interests you in this course as we moved through 20th century and into contemporary varieties. Let's say you wanted to look at 3 of those chapters from Pin. That's all you're going to be able to cover. Let's say you want to look at 3, and let's say you're going to demonstrate to me how well you read Pin by introducing the tradition and representing very precisely what Pin said about theodicy for that tradition. What is the meaning of evil for that tradition? That would be a way. I'm seeing this query, and we got to zero this down in. You need to establish historical context, and then if 3 is a great number to work with a research paper, your choice, you organize, you prioritize. If you're going to present voodoo and Ashe and humanism, and you are going to be able to contrast how each of them provided an answer. Think about Shiro here. Shiro's got a beautiful line about how Conjure provides an alternative moral universe in which the people can make meaning and provide a sense of their significance to themselves. So maybe you're going to start with that historical root and then move into how 3 contemporary examples of varieties of African American religious experience have answered the question of theodicy. Now, you read Pin, I read Pin. I don't want a book report on Pin, but I do want to see you accurately zeroing in and identifying what are the key elements of this tradition and what did Pin say was the unique take on theodicy. How did this tradition answer the problem of evil? So, that might be one way I would get back to this student. A thesis, therefore, would get down to this paper will identify the historical context of the slave trade, and by moving through 3 contemporary African American responses, non-Christian responses to the problem of evil, I will demonstrate how the African root has taken hold on American soil in 3 hybrid, resilient communities. Now that's something you can do if you're really good in 15 pages. Zero right in. I've had people in the past look at, one guy wanted to look at the metaphor of flight. He loved planes, he loved flying. He went through a related book that was called The People Could Fly, a folklore. The idea of the African who could fly became very important in folklore. There's a pretty good reason for that idea to be powerful, yes? And he actually went from that folklore idea of the people could fly, they could take flight from this amoral universe, toward all the way up to that recent film on the Tuskegee Airmen. And he wanted to look at how the significance of flight for the black community, for African American religious culture, from folklore to World War II. The variety of things you can do is really broad. Some of you will like that, some of you won't. I would say if you don't like the broadness, pick 1 or 2 of these readings that you can chew on for the next 3 weeks, improve your understanding of it, present it accurately to me, and hopefully you are going to have one of those moments of insight where you realize this idea really matters to me. I can shine light on a complex issue like double consciousness, or I can solve a problem. Why would African Americans continue to rely on the language of Christianity, given that the slave trade was fueled by a Christian embrace of white supremacy, by looking at the contemporary black church? You need to zero this paper in on something you can accomplish in 15 pages. I hope that's been of some help. Good night. That's not what I want to do. I want to turn you off. Stop.